But you're just back from California, aren't you, where they're putting their sunshine to even better use?
Yes, they are. Next up in our series from the United States about life post-oil, I've been, as you say, to California. Over the last 30 years, oil production in California and in the North Sea peaked around a similar level. But since oil production's been dropping, in California they've been turning their attention to alternative sources of power. Californians have a lot of pretty obvious reasons to be grateful for the sun. But there's another reason too. They're the world leaders in renewable solar power, and it's an industry that's helping to lift them and their housing market out of recession. That's something that Maureen Kennedy knows only too well. She used to be a government housing advisor and now works as an estate agent. And how much interest would you see in a house like this then?
Right now, prices are about 15% over the asking price. So we're on the market at $595, and we'll probably end up selling the house for about $650.
The housing market's picked up, and so have state finances.
It does feel like it's changing. I think that a lot of cities took the tack that if we can just hang on long enough to get through this downturn, then we'll be okay. And a lot of households did the same thing. There are a lot of communities that are still strapped, but they're doing much better and digging themselves out of that hole.
One of the driving forces of the recovery here is the solar industry, which employs more than 50,000 people in high-skilled jobs, and it's taken huge technological strides in recent years. Hi, you're
Hi
Patrick.
there.
Hi.
Welcome aboard the Alcatraz Flyer. This
Great.
is one of 3 hybrid ferry vessels we operate on a daily basis.
The Hornblower hybrid boat to Alcatraz is wind and solar powered, and it goes at quite a lick. But just like Scotland, here in California, they're facing the same issue. It's really difficult to have a renewable industry without some kind of government funding. In order to solve the problem of declining oil reserves and an economy in crisis, both Republican and Democrat state leaders have made big commitments to solar. That's given the industry confidence to invest for the long term, so they've become the most advanced renewable industry in the world. At Marin County Sheriff's Office, there's a surprise on the roof. Like hundreds of thousands of businesses and homes across California, they've taken advantage of state and federal tax breaks and grants to install solar panels, but the industry here is at a crucial junction. That funding is coming to an end.
Now, we're still dependent on that federal tax credit, and if that were to go away tomorrow, it would be big trouble for the industry. So we have 2.5 years before that expires to further drive down costs, so we'll be able to survive without that subsidy.
Do you think that's possible? Do you think you will?
I think it's absolutely possible. There are a lot of bright minds in the solar industry innovating in a lot of different ways, both technologically and financially, to make sure that we can survive post-subsidies. Given the boom in installations in solar energy in California and other places throughout the world in the past few years, there's been a huge expansion in production of solar modules, particularly in China, and that's brought the costs way down.
In fact, the cost of solar panels has more than halved over the past 5 years, with huge numbers of cheap imports being shipped into San Francisco Bay. The state's also decided that by 2020, a third of all the energy has to come from renewables, which has meant the world's largest solar ranches springing up in California's deserts, and they really are massive. But all this renewable power being used by electricity companies is driving up costs. California has one of the highest electricity prices in the United States.
Right now, there's no question that renewable power costs more than conventional power if you don't count the environmental costs. So as you put more renewable power onto the grid, it does drive up the costs. There's no question it's still more expensive than conventional sources, and the cheapest places in the country are the places that are burning a lot of coal.
And it's not just coal that's cheap. The huge rise in the amount of oil and gas from fracking has pushed down prices.
We don't really know how much gas we're going to get from fracking. Right now, it looks very promising, and it has pushed down the price of natural gas. That doesn't mean that solar and wind can't compete at some point, but it does mean that the bar has been set even lower that they have to hit before they can be cost competitive.
California's mature solar industry shows that renewables can provide a big economic boost and can reach the tipping point of surviving without government funding. But if Scotland wants to follow their lead, there's a long way for the wind and wave industries to go. Without UK energy subsidies, renewables will find it hard to compete, so the extra costs may well be added on to Scottish bills.
Coletta Smith there.